exists, then what do we do if mobility is not possible? What if, am I back now? Something?
Yes, Sabine, you're back.
Okay, I've been kicked out. Here I was. Also, when it comes to mobility and inclusiveness, what about all these people who cannot be mobile, like us right now? Yeah, but in the curriculum, how can you bring internationalization at home to your students? Maybe they have family, maybe they do not earn enough, maybe they have other handicaps that cannot make the move. Still, the big world should come to them because they will have to interconnect in the future with the world, whether they have been mobile or not. Formats. We have to be formats and they have to know about forms of cooperation. For Europe, very often you have the research and education programs steered at Brussels, which are Horizon Europe or Erasmus+. We have many projects that we deal with, whether we have to make a project in connection with a bank, for example, our institution, or with another agency. We should know what format, what language to use to deal with that. We are now here with strategic partnerships around the world, but where can we learn from each other? What is the difference between a bilateral cooperation on average level or on something strategic? Very much strategic cooperation right now in Europe is with these European university alliances. This is the idea that still President Macron many years ago got, which now brought new networks to us. Now, networks, you cooperate totally different, international networks, but I'm sure you also have networks within your countries that you have to serve and work for. What I mentioned here with toys is the good old times of paper are over. So right now, paper might be important since we do need some brochures or whatever, but now we have to work via websites. We have to use social media. We have to check with a data protection, what we can do and what we cannot do, actually, what we are allowed and not allowed. All of this, we should be experts, no matter whether we are or not. Trainings, especially right now, all the trainings that cannot take place in reality, but in a virtual mode. Let's do teaching in foreign languages. Let's train our teachers, our researchers, how to use Spanish, how to use English, what are the best expressions, what methodologies can be used to teach in an international classroom, to work with international groups. How can we deal with proposal writing, that we get more third-party money into our institutions? All of this we very often are involved with. And I'm very often asked the question, when you deal with these aspects, whether an international office should be central or decentral, or again, both ways. And for me, although we are very centrally organized, for me, this is not so much of an issue, because you have something on the agenda for your institution, and then you have to think who is dealing with that. And sometimes it's not important whether it's you in an international office or some other people in an office at a faculty or at an institute. Who is welcoming international people? Who is basically working with the people? It's not important. It's a question of man and women power and the communication between the areas. Because a welcome center with 20 people actually will be able to deal all different measures. We'll be able to handle daycare and visa and do university tours. Whereas somebody, when you only have one person, then you have to cooperate with the other areas in the institution who are responsible for that. And in addition, there are different variations. International offices around the world sometimes are very big because they have to get a lot of money in via recruitment. Yeah, recruitment in some countries is not an issue because money comes from the government. Sometimes international offices have to have a look into rankings, yes, and support their initiatives with data collection and explanations. Environmental challenges, and what you, for example, mentioned, Eduardo, that you have very close connections with other countries and other institutions. Now, it's the challenge that when it comes to international cooperation, the question is asked, there is a fantastic institution, for example, in Chile. Yes, they are very good in that. Let's work together. Let's exchange doctoral students on that. Let's do training courses. But Chile? I've heard of another institution in Sweden. Yeah, and for Austria, Sweden, it's much closer. They have other strengths, but maybe we can cooperate with them, and our carbon footprint then would be much better. So also this thinking is taking place right now. And last but not least, all the societal impact we have sometimes finds its way also to our international office, because whether this is now micro-credentials that we are dealing with, it all comes from the international corner, and we all have to work with that one way or the other. I hope that you are not asleep by now. Here are some of my contacts. If you want to reach me, of course, I'm here for other questions. If you still have time, and muchas gracias. And I'm looking forward to my colleagues for the next presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabine, for your presentation. Now, let's welcome to our second speaker. Patricio Conejero holds a degree in economics from Universidad de Buenos Aires. He was a research fellow of the Special Program for Urban and Regional Studies at MIT, an adjunct professor of the Department of Economics at Universidad de Buenos Aires, and currently he is the Executive Vice President of International Affairs of the same institution and Director of the Confucius Institute of Buenos Aires. Patricio, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniel. First of all, so thank you, Eduardo, for this invitation, and our colleagues from Europe. I'm very happy to be here today, sharing some thoughts, some ideas in this very particular moment. Well, of course, after the pandemic, we will need to rethink most of our international activities. There are many things that we should discuss, and I'm very honored to be here sharing some experience from Argentina, from our university. Let me open this. Well, here we are. Today I'm going to talk about good practices in international education. What I'm going to try to share with you are some ideas that the basic planning that we've been doing from our university, which is a very special university in terms of what we have become today after 200 years of history. This 2021, we are in our second centenary, and after 200 years of history, I think that it's very important to make a statement of what kind of university we are, because this is also this will be much more easy for you to understand the kind of international policy that we have. We are now a public university. We have no tuition in our programs. We are also a massive university. We have 320,000 students only in the undergrad, plus almost 30,000 in our postgraduate programs, which this represents an enormous students in our university. And this, of course, means that also all our academic programs must be defined in terms of this massive university that we are today. We also had 5 Nobel Prizes. The 5 Nobel Prizes of Argentina were are graduates or professors from our university, and 17 presidents of our country, including the present ones, are also graduates and faculty in our university. So the reality that I'm going to explain right now, our international policy, is also related with the kind of university that we are, which is a massive and non-tuition university in Latin America that, as we know, is a very unequal continent. I'm going to move a little bit fast in this part, because this is an idea of the beginning of the formal international policy in our university that goes back to 1980s. That was the very beginning of the internationalization process, at least in a formal way in our university, and it's been moving quite fast until the beginning of this century, when we finally create a formal international office, and now vice sorry, moving this here. And the thing that I'm going to talk with you today is most based in which are the strategic lines that we are working right now. First of all, one of our main situations is the idea that we have a regional and a global strengthening of the university. This means that we have a policy that pretend our university to be global from a regional perspective. We set the region and the cooperation with regional universities as a priority. This is, if you see our programs, here is the focus, but we are also working with some specific strategic partners at the global level, where we also put a lot of attention. Then there is another specific line which is related with the international academic cooperation, research internationalization, and of course, as Sabine mentioned before, international mobility. That is a very important part of our work. But in the last 4 years, we've been our policy in what we consider is probably the most important part, which is the research internationalization process. And here, of course, we need to understand that science knowledge plays a very important role in geopolitics. I mean, I think if there's something clear after this pandemic, is the key geopolitical role of science and knowledge. We, as a university that belongs to the global south, I think that we need to put special attention in trying to conduct and to facilitate the internationalization of our science and our research. And this has been, for the last 3 years at least, one of the main focus of our international policy. I don't have time to talk about all those international lines that we are working right now, but I would like to focus a little bit on when we talk about research internationalization in a massive public university in America. There are things that are very important for us, and they are not granted in our universities. And one of those are the specific regulations that we need to create inside our universities, that of course implies discussion with many different areas of our university to facilitate the internationalizations policies. You know, public universities in Latin America are quite bureaucratic, and we have specific procedures and regulations for most of the things that happen inside the universities. But until a couple of years ago, we didn't have specific regulations to manage internationalization processes in our universities. So one of the first focus that we had in the past years was to create specific regulations in terms of how to approve an international agreement, in terms of how to conduct a PhD co-tutel inside our university, in terms of how do we manage international affiliations for scientific publication. That was something that was not regulated inside of our universities, and right now we are working in a specific protocol to manage international processes. This is something that might be granted for some universities in some places, but let me tell you that at least for what we know from Argentina and Latin American universities, this is something that we need to work a lot. And this is something that represents a joint work of many parts of our university, but of course the international office must be leading that process. Also, we have different programs and actions focused on facilitate the research internationalization of our university. We have some programs that are the typical mobility programs. One of those is UVAIN Doctoral, which is focused in financing international research states for our PhD students. We have also programs that focus in our professors. We are now working in a very interesting program, which is UVAIN Publications. That is a program that we are going to be open to our scientific community to pay part of the and to facilitate the process of our scientific papers getting into international scientific magazines, which you know that this is something that is particularly complex for our research institute, and that has a very important cost for our, our idea is to facilitate the process, and that the university is going to take the responsibility of paying the fees for those publications to get into international publications. We have a very important number of programs related with the research international. We have another based in our scientific office that is for financing of short international stays for our PhD students. We have also another program that is very important for us, which is a comprehensive program of cooperation with Chinese universities. You know, this is something that we are putting a very close focus in facilitating the relationship of our academic community with Chinese universities. This is something, I mean, you need to understand that from Latin America, China is probably one of the most distant destinations. We have a tendency to cooperate with traditional destinations in Europe and in Latin America. But right now, from 3 years from now, we've been getting some finance. We've been creating different programs that are all content in this UVA China program that is specific dedicated to get funding to have an international experience for undergrad students, for professors, for researchers in universities in the Republic of China. Also, we have different sorts of PhD seminars that are conducted by different bilateral centers that we're going to mention in the presentation, and also a very important network for us, which is the Unión Iberoamericana de Universidades, which is a network between the University of Sao Paulo, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, and the University of Barcelona with the University of Buenos Aires, which is a very important network for us. And we are also having a very focus on joint research programs among those universities that are also funding for us and for other partners. Moving forward with the presentation, also in the sense of our research internationalization process, we put special attentions in the binational programs. Here is just an example of some specific masters and PhD programs that are very focused on research and have been built from different schools of us with universities abroad, particularly those that I brought here are particularly built with universities in Europe, but also of course we have some in the region in Latin America. I'm going to the specific point that is related with good practice on internationalization. We've been working in different aspects. One of those aspects is to create a sense of sensibility of the importance of internationalization in our university. We have a very important program in public administration in our School of Economic Science, and we include in that program as a subject called Internationalization of Higher Education, which is very focused on understanding the process of internationalization of universities and the importance that it has for our community, as a part of our policy of creating a sense of importance of this kind of policies inside the university priorities. Also, as a big university with 13 schools, we've been working in a process of decentralization, which we understand is very important because we need our schools to be autonomous and to be able to manage their own international programs, and from the central administration provide big guidelines, provide financing and provide support, but we need them to be autonomous. So part of the work that we've been doing in the past is related with the strength of those offices at the school. I believe that this is a very important part of a comprehensive understanding of what internationalization means in such a big institutions like ours. And also a very important part, and that we consider also part of our good practices in internationalization, is something that is being very traditional in our university, and is the creation and the development of bilateral centers of international cooperations that manage part of most of the cooperation with the specific countries. All those centers depends from the central international office, so it means that we have a central coordination of those centers, and as you will see, those centers probably represent the most important countries where we have cooperation in terms of the volume of the cooperation, and also it represents a specific subjects related with our international policies that we manage through the centers. And in this sense, we have the French-Argentine Center that has been working for more than 25 years, the Italian Argentine Centers, the Confucius Institute, which is a key element in our cooperation with China, the Russia Center of the University of Buenos Aires, the German Argentine Centers, the South Chair that we created together with United Nations, our School of Music, the Center, the International Center for Data Science Studies, that is also right now depending from our office, and one of the latest and more recent programs, which is the unit for climate change, that is doing a great work together with all the schools that have some kind of discipline related with this, and we are bringing this new center in order to centralize most of the information and promote the climate change discussion as a main part of the political statements of our university. I think I'm running out of the time, but this is probably the main ideas that I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patricio, for the presentation. Now, last but not least, I would like to introduce you to Ylva Hilbur. Ylva is the Pro-Vice Chancellor for International Relations at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences since 2017, and has worked and researched as a chemical ecologist at the same university. Before her current position, she worked as Deputy Director for the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture in Nigeria, and currently she is one of the coordinators of the international network Global Challenges University Alliance, which main goal is to enhance the capacity of its partners to contribute to the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Ylva, all yours.
Thank you very much, Danielle, and thank you for the invitation. It's really an honor to be here and to be able to have the opportunity to have a conversation around internationalization with you all and with the colleagues presenting today. So let me share my slides. Yes, So as Danielle mentioned, I'm working for the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and I can say it's quite different from Buenos Aires University. We're a small university, relatively young, 45 years, 4,000 something students and 3,000 something staff. Our focus is in research. It's about 70% of our turnover is related to research, and then 17 relates to educational programs, and the remaining is around environmental monitoring and assessment, which is a special assignment that we have from the Swedish government, as opposed to other Swedish universities. But my topic today is challenges and trends for international education, and I would like to illustrate that by a couple of examples that we've been doing over the last couple of years. And I have three major points here that I'd like to speak to. And the first one is around an action plan for internationalization of educational programs that we developed a couple of years ago. The other is to just talk a little bit around international networks that we're engaged in, how we link those to our educational programs at different levels. And finally, the question that I've been asked regularly in my role, is internationalization really sustainable? And I think both Patricio and Sabine touched upon that. Do we travel, don't we? And how do we do it in a sustainable way? But just to move on to the first point, internationalization. I joined in my current position in 2017, and I was greatly helped by a report that came out in 2018 that was commissioned by the government, a strategic agenda for internationalization of higher education in Sweden. And it focused on the importance in terms of relevance and quality of both research and education, of international exchange, interactions and influences. And it also had a key point in terms of Sweden's competitiveness on the global arena for talent attraction, but also in terms of contributing to the development of research. And the final important point, and these are two major volumes, so lots of information in those, but the final point that I'd like to raise here is that it really highlighted the importance of internationalization as an element of preparing students for a globalized and intercultural job market, not only abroad, but also in Sweden. So we took our starting point in that study when we developed our own plan. And also, Sabine, you mentioned the comprehensive internationalization, and that was an integral element of that report. And they were inspired by John Hudzik from Michigan State University and his reports, and talked about the importance of not having the international office at a corner of campus somewhere. That's his image, but rather to integrate internationalization in university management through technical staff, researchers, lecturers, administrators, and most importantly, students. So that was also part of our background when we started thinking about our plan. So the action plan, we decided to make it rather short to focus really on action. So it spans from 2019 to 2023, and it focuses on the first and second cycle educational programs, so bachelor and master level. And we set ourselves some rather concrete goals with indicators to make it possible to follow up on progress. But we didn't make it compulsory, but rather a list of suggested activities for different actors to prioritize. And we separated also, as you pointed out, Sabine, into the two major chapters on mobility and internationalization at home. Mobility, of course, being an extremely important element, both incoming and outgoing, but again, focusing on the individual, whereas internationalization at home reaches all individuals on campus. And I will not go into detail here, but these are some of the points that we highlighted in relation to internationalization at home. And an important aspect here is the intercultural perspective in courses and programs, and also the international perspective, and utilizing the experience of international students and teachers, Swedish classes, and also to explore the opportunities of distance learning in collaboration with other universities across the globe. In terms of mobility, we focus both on students and teachers, and actually also administrative staff. And there are a number of aspects here that I will not focus on now, but both incoming and outgoing students were in focus for this, and the welcoming of international students was an important element. Now, we followed up in 2020, 2021, and we saw that it was quite positive. So some of the goals and indicators that we had set ourselves were already achieved, as for instance related to student mobility and especially mobility of administrative staff. But we also realized when we did that the element of comprehensive internationalization and not having that international office, we sort of fell back on the integration paradox. If you integrate an issue, it also risks becoming a little bit invisible, and the responsibilities and the coordination of the task of internationalization becomes less obvious. And there is also risk of creating sort of new silos. And it might be difficult for students and others, potential staff, for instance, international staff coming to SLU, to find relevant information and to find the way in, because they will then have to know our organization and how we're organized and whom to ask. So what we're currently thinking about, and we're not there yet, is because we still believe that it's important to anchor internationalization in the relevant units of the university, but to somehow highlight it in some sort of virtual international office. We're not there yet, but we're having a conversation, and I think we might be able to see this as a path forward of both making it more easy to find, and also to ensure that we have a conversation between all those involved in internationalization in different aspects, and an opportunity to learn across groups working in internationalization. So that was just a reflection on those aspects. And I would now like to go on to the international networks. So as several or all universities, we're involved in a number of different networks, and I'm highlighting a few here. The green ones, the Access and SASUF, are sort of country-wise bilateral networks. The Access one is between Sweden and Chile, the other one is Sweden and South Africa, primarily research-oriented. And then, of course, we have the ICA and the EUA. Those are university associations at European level, mostly for management and for political and also cross-learning, but at a higher level. So looking at the ones here on the yellow box, we have NOVA, ELLS, and GCUA 2030. And those are all related to education in different ways. And I would just like to highlight them here. So the NOVA University Network is our oldest university network. It relates back to 1995. And it's agricultural and life science universities in the Nordic countries that come together around sharing responsibility for developing and providing top quality doctoral courses for doctoral students in an international context. And one of the important aspects of these courses is that they have led to the creation of really strong professional networks across these countries. And several courses have been going on for many, many years as course series. So it's been an important network from that perspective. We have now changed the setup a little bit, and it's a very simple network with contributing a minor membership fee, but then contributing courses, so sort of an in-kind contribution. And then opening up these courses for free for doctoral students from other NOVA universities. We've also moved from, and that's pandemic related partly, from having on-site courses, 2 to 3 week courses, which of course stimulates the networking, but on the other hand becomes quite costly. So we're now seeing more of digital courses and blended courses as well in relation to the NOVA network. So, and this is new as of 2 years ago when we renewed our network agreement. The other network that is one of our stronger networks is the Euroleague for Life Sciences, or ELLS, where we have 7 universities in Europe, and also 2 non-European partners. It's Hebrew University in Jerusalem and Lincoln University in New Zealand. But other than that, we are European life science or agricultural universities. It's about 20 years since we created this network. It focuses on master's students and mobility of master's students within Europe, and also to support each other in terms of expertise and infrastructure to jointly enhance our quality in education. Summer schools is a very successful and very much appreciated joint activity. We also have several joint master's programs. One important element of the ELLS network is the Scientific Student Conference, where master's students meet once a year. And it's a proper conference, talks by invited researchers, but most importantly, talks by students, and also poster sessions, awards and prizes. Again, an important networking element. We had the meeting last year, and it was for the first time a completely virtual event, extremely successful, conducted by BOKU in Vienna. And we're having a new meeting now in Warsaw by the Warsaw University of Life Sciences. And again, the student conference will be virtual, but we will combine that with a physical meeting of university management and others involved in this collaboration. So we see a movement towards more virtual events, and we're learning. So this conference was my first encounter with the tool WonderMe. I'm sure several of you have tried it by now, which is a little bit more flexible than Zoom, and was much appreciated by the students. Now, as Daniel mentioned, SLU is organizing or coordinating the Global Challenges University Alliance 2030, which is a global learning forum targeting the next generation of academic leaders. And what the objective is to equip doctoral students with knowledge, tools, and network that will strengthen their capacity to work across disciplines. And that was referred to earlier on, the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration, translational research, and also overall to be able to contribute to sustainable global development. We're 20 partners. University of Chile is one of our partners. And what we do together is also activity-based. So we're focusing on learning and networking activities, targeting primarily these doctoral students. So we're developing a course package focusing on transferable skills, also a global mentoring program for doctoral students, and then sharing between ourselves. When we have a webinar of interest, a course, a workshop, we open it up to the GCOA members. So to be able to also provide to these students in-depth knowledge in research areas of relevance to the global challenges. And finally, we're also developing a case study program where we're planning to strengthen the capacity of doctoral students to address global challenges by, again, putting them together in multidisciplinary teams and culturally different teams to be able to see new perspectives and to learn from others across the globe in how we look at the SDGs and what the priorities are. When we developed this program, and this is funded by the Swedish Foundation for International Cooperation in Research and Higher Education, we opted, and this was pre-pandemic, we opted for a primarily digital program. So several of these activities are conducted online. And we are, of course, somehow happy that we did so, because it has helped us to be able to follow the original plan of the program. So finally, reflecting on, is international collaboration or internationalization sustainable? So one can look at it in different ways, and we've talked about it, and I think this is what has emerged so far, that international collaboration is a prerequisite for sustainable development. We need to collaborate globally. We need to understand different perspectives. There are plenty of trade-offs that we need to sort out, but there are also synergies to be found. And for that purpose, we need to have that conversation. But on the other hand, we talked about the climate aspect. We talked about other perspectives. So one can also ask the question, is it a threat to sustainable development? Looking at it from the goals, the SDGs, of course, Goal 17 is essentially about global collaboration for the goals. But as I mentioned before, I get that question, and pre-pandemic, it was mostly related to climate change. And I'm sure you know of Greta, although we haven't heard that much about Greta beforehand, but our students, SLU students, formed the group called Climate Students and put a lot of pressure on not only SLU, but all other Swedish universities. And we have some ambitious climate goals. We're, as a university, to be carbon neutral by 2027. And that will impact that has impacted or had pushed us to form a very strict travel policy, especially concerning international travel. And so that's one aspect. And then we have, and this is what we discuss a lot within the GCUA, the aspects of decolonization of research and the ethics related to international collaboration. And it's coming up not only within the GCUA, where Nelson Mandela University, one of our GCUA partners, this is a very urgent conversation at that university and something that they want to promote within the network around the decolonization of research. Which language are we going to use when we collaborate, when we do our research, for instance? Is it it doesn't have to be English. And at our own university, who do we collaborate with in terms of responsibility? Does it, do we look at the democratic situation in countries? How do we collaborate with certain universities? Those are aspects that we need to consider. So ethical and responsible internationalization is also affecting how we work and how we do this. And of course, I'm just using number 3 here to illustrate the pandemic, which of course has both hampered internationalization, but on the other hand, as you talked about initially, Edward, it has also really propelled our way into being able to have these meetings over Zoom as we're doing right now. So some positive development here. Personally, I'm convinced that international collaboration is a prerequisite for sustainable development, and that goal number 7 overrides several or sort of joins all the others. But I think that we need to take these other aspects into account when we do internationalization in different ways. And with that, I think my time's up, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ylva, for such an enlightening presentation. Just a reminder to all our participants today, this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the video to your emails. So do not worry. I saw someone ask in the chat box. Now it's time for a Q&A session. You may send your question using the option Preguntas y Respuestas or Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Our team will be collecting your messages. In case your question is for a specific speaker, indicate it so in the chat box, or our team could answer you accordingly. We have some of your questions here. To Sabine, it says, "Hi Sabine, thank you for your intriguing presentation. I would like to know more about your teaching methodologies for the international classroom." This question is from our graduate director, Alicia Salomone. Sabine would like to answer right now, or would you prefer to collect some? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I can answer right now. Thank you for the question. This was a challenge that we got already almost 25 years ago, when all of a sudden more and more international students came to our campus. And the typical Austrian student is like a fish, you know, just sitting in the classroom, not saying a word. And all of a sudden the international students hit, asking questions, not saying a word, writing a question out. And our teachers were totally surprised. I'm exaggerating, as you might find out. So we started just offering courses there. And now we include it into virtual reality, virtual exchange. And what we do is, there are just small aspects. First of all, when we hire new international professors, we always include the question, do you have experience to teach in an international classroom, right? So we want to get people who know what to do with an international classroom. International classroom as students, doctoral students, whatever, from different countries. Then we also hope, and we always ask, that for the new positions we get people who are able to teach in a foreign language, which is mainly English, I have to say, in Austria, but it depends on which faculty you are going and to which institute. So they are the foreign language. And then how to include the students. For example, when you have a class with students that you collect, where do the students come from? Can you include examples from their countries into the teaching? When you make group works, always to make sure that national and international students are there in mixed groups. Can you actually start some, what you mentioned, Eva, decolonization process? Are you brave enough to let one of the students speak from a totally different perspective? This then is easier when it comes to doctoral students. And to add this also into the international classroom. There is much more atmosphere in it, but it's very challenging for a teacher, and it's not the very classic way. Teachers have to be open for that. So this is just very short, my answer. There are far more questions.
Perfect, thank you very much, Sabine. Now this question is for Patricio. It says, thank you, Patricio, for sharing your experience at UVA. Universidad Chile Internationalization Project prioritize South-South relationships, especially within our region. As head of the postgraduate studies department, I can say that we've been keen to increase our cooperation in joint doctoral training. Would it be possible to schedule a meeting to discuss this matter? This is from Alicia Salomone too. We'll send you her details. This question now goes to Yilva. It says, greetings. There is a continued focus on research partnerships, but I'm curious about support for online collaborative teaching. This question comes from Betsan Smith. Could you comment us about that?
So there is support for, could you repeat the question, please? I'm not sure I could develop it a little bit. Perhaps.
Yes, there is a continued focus on research partnerships, but I am curious about support for online collaborative teaching.
In terms of support for how to conduct it, or to agreements to do collaborative teaching, or I think I would, if the person who asked the question is around, could you please just develop a little bit more specifically what it relates to?
We could ask to Betsan Smith to complement that question in the chat box. In the meantime, we have another question for you. Internationalization may be easier with the Faculty of Science, but how can one use the strength of social sciences, humanities, and arts? And I think this could be an open question too to Sabine and Patricio, not only to Yilva. How can we promote the interfaculties capacities in internationalization?
I really don't see it as a divider, that there should be more opportunities for internationalization within science. I think it's an open question, and within the GCUA, for instance, we really welcome interdisciplinary collaboration, and we have now expanded our partnership beyond the original set of, or the original focus on agricultural and life science universities, to integrate also other areas of science and other universities. And I think it's important to integrate and to encourage internationalization across all subject areas. That will be my thinking around that. I'm sure Sabine and Patricio has other views to contribute.
Patricio?
Yeah, first I want to answer Alicia Salomone, and of course, Alicia, I already know of your contact, and it would be great for us to discuss some further cooperation in that term. That in the first time. Which is exactly the question, Daniel, that it's open.
Okay. Says internationalization may be easier with the Faculty of Sciences, but how can we use the strength of social sciences, humanities, and arts?
Okay, now, sorry, there was something in my connection and I couldn't hear the entire question, but now I found it. I agree with the ILBA. I don't see any specific difference related with the disciplines in that sense. I think that maybe the discipline may eventually implies a difference in terms of the region where you established some kinds of cooperation. Of course, the agenda of internationalization that we might have with China or with Mexico or with different countries, it's different because I think there is a country profile on the things that are more relevant for us to work in an international sense. But I think that all disciplines are sensitive enough to be internationalized, and they have I mean, if you see the map of the internationalization, we will find that, I mean, that science in the strict sense, or social science, they all find and specific places to cooperate with.
I fully agree. If I may add something as well. And on the contrary, I sometimes think that it's more difficult to boost up the natural sciences because they always think, well, physics is physics. Again, exaggerating, right? And no matter where you go, this has to be the same. I think the bigger challenge for some areas is the recognition then afterwards, or the cooperation to accept the other. So that's why I fully agree you can internationalize basically everything if you have the willingness of the faculty and the people who are with it.
Perfect, thank you very much. We have another question, an open one too. Could you comment how you see the post-pandemic scenario in internationalization? What will change? What will remain? It's a complicated and tough question, but I think it's a very good one.
Well, I'm going to bring some my thoughts on this. I think that, of course, with the speed of the procedure that we experience on online education during the 2021 and 2022, it's been amazing. Of course, we will have on online programs a new asset to explore and to diversify our international policy. But at the same time, after 1 year and a half of teaching and assisting to different virtual events, I don't know how you colleagues do you feel this in our universities, but I think that we are now facing a situation where people is not so willing to participate and to be part of online proposals and online meetings. And of course, it means I don't want to mean that we won't keep having this kind of possibilities. I mean, the fact that now we can share this space and have some discussion through and a virtual tool is very important, but I think that in the future we will experience come back to the presence, to more face-to-face situation that some people expect.
Can I come in? Yeah, I think we've seen a sort of a paradigm shift now during the last couple of years, and especially with the technology improving vastly compared to the old change programs, etc. But I think they will always remain, and to try to identify and prioritize when is it really important to travel and what really matters. I think that will be the exercise that we will be doing. We will be a little bit more selective, perhaps, in the future.
They wanted to abroad. They had to sign up for the students. The students went abroad, and then maybe when they came back, maybe they saw them again. Now with the new formats that also the European Commission is trying to bring under the universities, you should cooperate, you as an academic, with your students, with a colleague in another country, and the other students, first virtually. You always have the students, your students, and the other students in your backpack. And then at the end, you include physical exchange, and then maybe you even go with your students abroad. So it's much more intense, the time that you spend with your students, because you have to hold them on your hand to guide them through the virtual world as well. And I personally think that the online courses for students were very convenient, and they could spend more time on it. They loved it. They didn't have to go to university. But I hope that there will be times where they can meet and where they can exchange ideas, maybe with a beer, maybe with a coffee, where they can also fight over topics, because those will be the people who in a couple of years will pay for us and our retirement, and they need to communicate in real and not in a virtual world.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sabine. Eduardo, how do you see the post-pandemic scenario here at Universidad de Chile? What's your big picture?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I'd like to comment on this last issue, because I really believe that what will happen is that with the virtual exchange, we are democratizing the international experience. So there will be an explosion of demand for more travel and more face-to-face interaction. And I think nowadays we are forced to have everything virtually, but in the future, there will be people will be eager to learn. And what the networks provide is continuity in those relationships. And I cannot stop thinking of my own personal experience, because in the early 90s, I was working as a young researcher in NTT laboratories in Japan. We were working on the technologies that we're using now, basically video conferences. And at that time, we had discussions among researchers saying, well, if we provide video conferences on our mobile phones, and I'm talking about the 90s, I mean, this is when all this development started, and the airlines will go bankrupt. And it was absolutely the opposite. I mean, once people were able to communicate long distance through IP networks at very low cost, there was an explosion of travel abroad, and airlines did extremely well. So video conferences were not a menace. On the contrary, it activated the economy and the globalization of the planet. So I think that on the other hand, what we are experiencing now is extremely important, because people need to have human networks. The technology is only a tool, something that we can't lose track of that. That's extremely important. So nothing will replace the human connection, the trust you build through knowing each other. So the networks and the magnificent technology is just a tool. We should always keep that in mind.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Eduardo, for that comment. We have to see all the digital tools, whether it be Zoom, Menti, and any other form of international collaboration in teaching, as a complement. And none of them are exclusive. Actually, we have to find the mix and match of each one of those. Eduardo?
May I make one more comment?
Yeah, sure.
Is Zoom and the virtual online education allows to diminish the gap between the research that goes on in our universities and the teaching, because you can invite your own researchers in your department to make comments and to participate in classes. So what I'm finding out is that the online education provides completely different tools than the face-to-face lesson, and the two will have to live together. And actually, as the speakers mentioned, the role of the teacher is changing immensely. In my own course, I used to have to teach the content. Now I teach some content, but on other contents, I invite my colleagues worldwide to participate in the class, and I organize. And the evaluation of the students has been outstanding. I mean, because that's a different kind of class that we were able to. That's another contribution that this pandemic did. It would have taken us maybe 20 years to produce that change without these present circumstances. So I think that's extremely valuable. But again, never forget, because the students, what they need is the human contact with their teachers. They need to be guided, just like children need their parents to be there. So I think that our role is changing, and I find that we can concentrate it on much more human aspects that are certainly incredibly important, because teaching the emotional, the human part is essential in trying to grasp the academic know-how. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. We have two final questions. One is for Patricio. Do you have any indicators to measure the results of the research internationalization policy at UEA?
We are working on that. We are working on that. You know, what it's not defined, cannot be measured. So we are right now working together with the science and research office of our university to start measuring the impact on this. But of course, yes, we mainly can see the impact of those policies in our publication rates, which is something that we follow. There are several different kinds of indicators. You can see it in terms of the disciplines, in terms of the regions, in terms of the countries, in terms of the universities, and we are now putting a much stronger effort with to start measuring this. This is I really thank this question, because this is part of the main things we are trying to develop in the time that we have ahead on this year.
Perfect. Gilva, Sabine, Eduardo, could you comment on this too? How we measure the results of international research?
Yeah, let me mention that I think that we are looking, I mean, of course, the quality of the research and the ranking of the scientific magazines will always be important. But more and more, we are also experiencing the need to change, to look at the impact that the research has in society. And also, it's very important, the transdisciplinarity of work. Because when you are trying to bring ideas from two areas that are different, sometimes the faculty members, we have difficulty in publishing, because it's if it's not established, if it's too new, it doesn't have a place. And consequently, we need to adjust the evaluations of our faculty members in a more flexible way. I think that this is sometimes a barrier for innovation. And I also, again, have a very personal experience. And about 12 years ago, in the Center for Mathematical Modeling, we started an effort in astroinformatics, and that was big data with astronomy. And there was no journals in that, and a lot of young researchers said, well, I mean, this is going to be the end of our careers. And I mean, I had to make an extreme follow this. Now they are now the experts in big data. So you can imagine that their academic blossom. But at that point, when you are starting something new, there are lots of barriers, and our universities the academic work is not flexible enough to accommodate that. I would say that industrial research sometimes has been faster in that pace. And so we need to keep track. We need to keep the best of our tradition and history, but also under the present circumstances, look that we need to be more flexible and faster to address the challenges of the future. So that's a little bit the challenge in the academic world. And of course, learning from others is essential. We can't reinvent everything. So in that respect, that the international collaboration is absolutely needed. I mean, what we learned from Austria, Sweden, and Buenos Aires or Argentina is extremely important in this discussion. Otherwise, we would be looking at, we would not have such a rich understanding of our own problems.
Thank you very much, Eduardo.
I think if we look at, well, we know that if we talk about international research collaboration, that and look at the bibliometrics related to those, that those are usually more cited than just national papers, evidently. So we see that if we want a simple measure of what is the benefit of international research collaboration, it's quite obvious to see, and you can look at it depending on regions and countries and in different ways, look at whether they are among the top cited papers within their research areas. Well known fact. But I think what you were saying, Eduardo, about the impact is important, and the societal impact. And there are, of course, different ways of looking at that. As a university, we've conducted in 2009 and also in 2018, a quality and impact evaluation with external panels flying to look at not only the research quality and sort of look at research units and their level of competitiveness in a global perspective from a scientific point of view, but also to look at the potential societal impact, and most importantly, the plans of these research group of impact in society. If you are working in a very advanced plant molecular area, the immediate societal impact might not be obvious, but the strategic planning for and the awareness of where does that lead in the longer perspective, and to what will be the impact pathway of the research that is being conducted was part of the evaluation, and something that these external panels also reflected on. And I think from our perspective, we're currently looking at, and I'm sure some of the universities present here today are already part of the Times Higher Education SDG impact ranking, which of course is another way of, you talked earlier, Sabine, about benchmarking as one of your areas. And whether this will turn out to be some kind of agreed joint benchmarking on the contribution of higher education to sustainable development could be interesting. And I think we have looked at it, we have analyzed whether or not to make the effort, but we see that some of these indicators, as they're are aligned with what we would like to do anyway, and it will be a way of developing quality as we like to develop quality anyway. So it aligns with what we're doing. That's one reason for doing it, and I think it could be. We've decided that we're going to try out and see if it is an interesting exercise for us.
Thank you, Ylva. Sabine?
Yeah, the measurements, but you have already mentioned that they are in place when it comes to research, because it's how much money do they bring in to my institution, and how is my ranking with all these research. Then what about the publications? What about the quotations? But also, what jobs do my alumni get? If people do have to leave my institution, where are they now? And how can all these researchers contribute to education? And then that more and more students are interested to come to my institution. Of course, the interest is more on PhD students, but you have to start already on bachelor level. We all know, because then the chances are higher that they will stay. For the PhDs, everybody's reaching out. So there are different ways, direct indicators and indirect indicators, I think.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We have a final question. It's an open question too, from our colleague Volodymyr Taravara. The academic community is relatively well integrated and cosmopolitan in its outlook and approaches. How can researchers and teachers in higher education build on that and help bridge political and other divides? What's the big picture here?
Well, if I may, first of all, nice to hear from you, Vlad. I didn't know you'd be present. And then secondly, I think it's what we've been discussing largely today, that international collaboration is of essence, and for many reasons, to advance science, but also to build bridges, as you're stating in your question. And I think to continue to build on that and to be open to new collaborative efforts and to try to, as was mentioned before, the importance of networks in terms of the long-term perspective, to establish trust and stronger relationships. I think those are important issues in relation to your question.
Okay, anyone else? Patricio? No? Wow.
Well, I think it is a very interesting point. And of course, in Latin America, we know very well what this kind of questions refers to. And I think that the pandemic and all the public debate around the pandemic and the right strategy to approach the situations from the government, it's been under very interesting situations in the public debate. And I think that universities, teachers, researchers, students also, we have a very important role to bring to this public debate scientific opinions, things that, it's very interesting to see that things that in the academia and are not under discussions, because most of the people who actually understand about an issue and understand about the problem, they have a clear idea of what should be done related to problems, but then you will see that in public debates, in political debates and discussions, there are many different points of view that sometimes leads to very complex situations in the management of this. And I think that here there is a clear role of universities. And if you see, particularly in Argentina, I know that happened in Chile, I know this happened in Argentina and many other countries, universities, we had a very important role in defining the definition of the main policies that our governments use or define to fight against COVID-19. And I think this is the role that we expect from our universities, to bring to public debate, to political debates, the right ideas and the right decisions to approach problems.
Perfect, thank you. Sabine?
And if I may add, it is true that the academic community is very well connected, and the community even survived Corona, right? But it's only those who had met before, yeah? Those were able to continue the cooperation, the communication, the exchange. I think it's a very difficult time for those young academics who never had a chance to meet other people, to start building up this trust on both ways, because that's essential. No matter whether we are being asked for political questions or cooperation, people have to talk to each other, trust each other, and exchange ideas. And this is also something that in universities, people have bridges, but these are their bridges. You are my colleague and only my colleague. And once they institution, then for the institution, sometimes the cooperation is also gone. So I think that we have to bring in the next generation for the existing cooperation, but to let them and hope for them to build up their own cooperation, trust, and friends as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now it's time to wrap up our webinar. We would like to thank you once again for your participation in this event today. We really hope you enjoyed as much as we did. Please have a great rest of the week. Stay safe and have a good day. Goodbye to everyone.
Thank you very much, Sabina,
Bye.
Val, and Patricio. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you. Gracias.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hope to see you in real one day or the other.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are eager to travel now.